Yo, what up, a-holes? Thank you for tuning into the Holistic A-Hole podcast. My name is Erik Levi, and I'm the Holistic A-Hole, the mommy blogger with balls, the inconvenient truth of health. Oh boy, has this week not been the most inconvenient truth of health that you've probably ever heard. Because if you're just tuning in here for the first time on the Holistic A-Hole podcast, I have, not by plan, dedicated this week, the second week in October 2018, to just taking down the flu shot. And so we've talked about the flu shot, its basic ineffectiveness. We've talked about the harmful ingredients in the flu shot. So of course, I'm getting some pushback from the old a-holes out there. Some people have been hitting me up on the social mediums, and you can find the Holistic A-Hole on all the social mediums. Twitter at Holistic A-Hole, Facebook Holistic A-Hole, also the Holistic A-Holes Facebook group, Instagram Holistic A-Hole, and then of course the Holistic A-Hole YouTube page. So if you love the Holistic A-Hole, I highly encourage you to go on over to these social mediums, or you can keep in touch like some a-holes have done this week. I've gotten some nice compliments. Some people, I'm not going to say who they are, you know who you are, saying that they appreciate the truthfulness and the braveness of going after the vaccine industry like this. But then I'm getting a lot of pushback from some of you a-holes, and some people are very upset about this. And I do kind of want to come back and tackle a little bit of that today, because I'm not going to come at you like I'm trying to, argue with you or debate you. I'm happy to debate you, but you know, when you come down to like name calling and you're an anti-vaxxer and you want kids to die and all this crazy shit, this helps me to know that I am in fact doing the right thing by putting this information out there. And let's be clear, I am not a doctor, I'm not a scientist, I'm not giving you any medical advice here. I highly encourage you that if you are intrigued by what I'm saying, that this is more of a springboard for you to start doing your own research, to go ask your doctor about these things that I'm bringing up. You know, because there's a lot of numbers, there's a lot of stats, there's a lot of just untold history that comes along with this subject matter. And, you know, you can label me an anti-vaxxer all you want. I am not anti-vax, but what I am is anti-being forced to put a poison in my veins simply because the powers that be say that I must. And they really hold your feet to the fire on this, do they not? You know, you can't, if you're a kid, go to school or go to public school if you don't have a perfect immunization record. You can't travel if you don't have an immunization record. You can't get a job. You can't get a lot of jobs if you don't have a perfect immunization record. You really are pretty much forced out of society if you choose to not have an immunization record. And all I'm doing is saying, okay, if we're going to be like that, then at least give me the information I need to make my own decision, okay? Because I promise you, if I get smallpox, not everybody around me is getting smallpox, okay? That's not how this shit works. So, and that's the other part, is we just have a fundamental misunderstanding of how diseases get spread, about how viruses work, about how bacteria works. It's not as simple as just saying, oh, if you've got a virus and you walk into a room, now everybody in that room has that virus. It's just not that simple. Yet this is how we essentially generalize this whole field. And it is way more complicated than that. That's all I'm saying, okay? The other thing that comes up a lot, you know, when people start lobbing these anti-vax hand grenades at you, you know, people will say things like, and it's so funny that this is like the same line every time, but it's like, you understand that without vaccines, the polio virus would still be running rampant. Everybody would have polio. Vaccines eradicated polio. It cured the world of polio. Otherwise, we would all be dead from polio. And I get why you say that. I understand, because that's the talking line. You know, it's like if I just turn on NPR right now and they say something about, hey, it's time to get a flu shot. Be careful of those people who tell you to not get a flu shot because they don't understand that polio was eradicated because of vaccinations. It's the same talking point every time. So let's talk about these diseases. Let's talk about these diseases that, you know, everyone comes back at you. If you put any kind of pushback against a vaccine, that this is the argument they come back at you with. So I want to give you a little ammo here to use, or maybe just a jumping off point, again, to do your own research, because this shit is really, really interesting. Let's discuss smallpox for a minute, because, you know, again, this is a thing that we all just assume when they invented the smallpox vaccine, smallpox just went away. Smallpox, the history is a little fucked, okay? First off, it was credited to be invented by this guy, Dr. Edwin Jenner, in 1735, who basically was living in Leicester, England. Is that it? Lancaster, Leicester. And so there was a scourge of smallpox plaguing the town, and everybody around him is getting smallpox. And then he noticed that the milkmaids, basically the ladies who went out and milked his cows, they weren't getting the smallpox virus. And so this piqued the question in his mind, well, what are they doing that is keeping them from not getting smallpox? And what he deduced was it has something to do with the milking of the cows. So he tried some experiments where he realized that the cows had their own viruses and bacteria and diseases. And so what he decided to do was to use his own son and to use his neighbor's son, which, you know, let's be honest, was probably a real piece of shit. That's how the neighbor's sons always are, right, fellas? I don't even know what that means. He's probably a good dude. I don't know. I shouldn't say that. But at 8 years old, man, 8 years old, he gives this cowpox, basically, you know, the disease from the cows. He injects his kids and the neighbor's kid with the cowpox, and pretty much observed them. And they got several of these doses, and it wasn't like, you know, it was like a clean needle or anything. Like, they basically cut the arm open and then put the disease, put the virus, the live virus, in the body, and was just like, okay, well, let's see what happens. And they pretty much observed that both kids died at the age of 21 and 20 of tuberculosis, not of smallpox. So people will use that and say, well, see, they didn't die of smallpox, although there are a lot of clinical connections between smallpox and tuberculosis. So it's not really a surprise then that they died of tuberculosis, because a lot of people who experience smallpox at some point suffer from tuberculosis, if not pass away. So, you know, time goes on and smallpox is, you know, plaguing certain towns, and, you know, people are going crazy because they're getting smallpox. What do we do? What do we do? There was, you know, specifically some epidemics that went on between, in England again, 1857, 1859. There was one between 1863, 1865, 1870, 1872. Thousands of people are dying from smallpox. It's also that same time that they started getting heavily involved into trying to vaccinate these people from the smallpox illness. By the way, oddly enough, the name vaccine comes from the Latin word vacca, which means cattle. So this whole thing that we're talking about, where we talk about vaccine, we're basically talking about this thing that originally came from a cow. So if that doesn't horrify you enough. You should know that this almighty vaccine, it comes from the word cattle. So it has nothing to do with medicine, which I just find, one of those fun things that we talk about in history. So the idea with this is there is this thing called the Leicester effect, or I think it's called the Leicester effect, where basically what is claimed is that all these people in Leicester, England, were getting smallpox, and a lot of it was because they were getting quote unquote vaccinated. And it just so happened that as you see the amount of vaccines go up, you also see the amount of smallpox go up. And what they claim to have done was that they just simply sanitized and quarantined people's areas. And so they just kept them in complete isolation. They cleaned everything, and then the disease, the body's immune system fought the disease on its own. So I guess you could say that the smallpox was the compromise of the body's immune system due to, I guess, dirty factors that people lived around. I haven't researched enough of, 1860s, 1870s, 1880s, Leicester, England to see, was there like dirty water? Was there poop in the streets? Was there, all these things that we think about when we think about like 19th century early America, early Europe. It was a dirty place by all accounts. Also, the Industrial Revolution, people are using all these weird chemicals for the first time. So it's very possible. There's this great story here in New York City about the old Collect Pond, which is actually now underneath Chinatown. And the story is that this is like early New York, like the British New York, the Dutch New York. They were drinking water out of this Collect Pond, and then it just so happened people here were getting very sick. Well, with all these diseases, yellow fever, smallpox, cholera, and a lot of it was because these businessmen built businesses, specifically a slaughterhouse, and they put it right on the water's edge of the Collect Pond, and all the runoff from the businesses would go into the water, and the people kept drinking the water and kept getting even more ill. So maybe it was something like that, right? So people call this, I believe it's called, I wish I had the actual name in front of me, like the Leicester effect. And, but then you have the pro-vaccination people that say, no, those numbers are skewed because they're, they didn't actually quarantine as much as they say they did. They say they quarantined, but the people closely surrounding these people were all actually vaccinated. So the people that they came in contact with were actually vaccinated from the disease themselves. And then some of the people that were quarantined were also vaccinated. So vaccines actually help this situation. It gets real muddy, and it's really hard to differentiate if you're just doing a Google search. I mean, you really have to dig through, just whatever literature you can find, and you just don't know who to trust because everybody has an agenda, except for the holistic a-hole. So smallpox is a little confusing, and it's not as simple as just saying that the vaccination helped it go away, because in a lot of cases, the vaccination actually made it worse. But let's move on to polio, because polio is this just blows my mind. And I really hope you a-holes are paying attention, and I really hope you take this to heart, because I really hope this is not a thing that gets lost in history, because I can already see that it is getting lost in history, okay? So polio was first discovered early 1900s, I think like the first years of the 1900s, maybe even like the 1800s. But it didn't really start becoming a problem until like the early 1930s. So you can actually pull up cases of polio, like polio charts, and it's really about the year 1937 that you start to see the polio starting to really make its impact felt. And so you kind of see like 1937, the 1930s. Okay, now the 1940s is starting to peak, drops in the mid-1940s, and shoots back up in the late 1940s. And the cases of polio hits its peak, I believe this is 1953. So then they come out with the polio vaccine in, I believe it was 1955. And then all the cases, drop. And then it's shortly after that, there are no cases of polio really after like the 1960s or so. So people will say that, okay, well, see, this is a clear example of how the polio vaccine completely eradicated polio. And man, if you want to know the amount of fuckery that was going on with this stuff, let's talk about it. Because there was quite a bit of fuckery that was happening here with the polio vaccine. So the first thing you should know is that they diagnosed polio differently before they came out with the vaccine and after they came out with the vaccine. So before 1955, polio was a pretty wide umbrella of diseases. So it included a lot of symptoms. So if you had, one of these polio symptoms, whether it was like, some form of paralysis or like an achy back or headaches, I guess like dry throat, all these different things, you go to the doctor before 1955, he would say, okay, that's polio, right? Then they create the polio vaccine, and all of a sudden, the cases start going down of polio. But at the same time, other diseases started increasing. So specifically, July 1955, you have 273 cases of polio. September 1966, you have 65 cases of polio. So it's very easy to say, okay, look, all of the polio went down, okay? But what they don't tell you is that in July of 1955, there was only 50 cases of aseptic meningitis, and then in September 1966, there was 161 cases of aseptic meningitis. And then in July 1971, there was only 5 cases of polio and 256 cases of aseptic meningitis. So basically what they did was an aseptic meningitis, it's basically the same thing. It includes a lot of the symptoms. All the symptoms, I shouldn't say all, but most of the symptoms of polio, just like coxsackie, the coxsackie virus, even Lyme disease, So basically what they did is they took the disease polio, and after the vaccine came out, they said, well, all these other diseases, we're not going to call that polio anymore. We're going to call it aseptic meningitis. We're going to call it the coxsackie virus. I think it's coxsackie, if that's not a hilarious name for a virus. And then the Lyme disease and all these other diseases that used to be polio now are these own separate diseases. So naturally, after 1955, you're going to see the rate of polio cases being diagnosed in the country fall dramatically because they're just not using the diagnosis anymore. While at the same time, you see these other cases of these different associated viruses start to shoot up. Right? So did polio actually go away, or did it just do did it just get a rebrand, as something else? Very suspicious. I'm not saying either way what happened, but do your research. See for yourself, okay? Now, here's the really fucked up thing that this just makes me sick to my stomach. So in the 1940s, so in World War II, the arsenic DDT, it is a very difficult word to say. Let's see if I can pull it off. Oh, I don't have it. It's like tetrahydrochloric something or another. It's a lot of letters. But let's just call it DDT for simplicity's sake. So this insecticide The became very popular in World War II because it helped to protect troops from biting mosquitoes. The malaria was a huge problem for troops in World War II, and so they start using this basically this poison, this insecticide, which was pretty much arsenic, to control the mosquitoes, to get rid of malaria, and to help the troops stay vital while they fought on the war front, okay? So after World War II, of course, manufacturers get their hands on it, and they repackage it as, something you can use in your home, right? So if you want to kill all the pests in your home, you get yourself some DDT, right? If you, nowadays it's used as a pesticide. It's what kills the bugs on all the fruit and the vegetables and stuff. So we're still injecting this stuff. Well, here's the really fucked up thing, was people were concerned about the safety of DDT back in the 1940s, 1950s. They're like, it's a chemical, it's not natural. Why would I put this in my house? It can kill me. And so there was this huge marketing campaign that was actually called, I don't know why I'm laughing because it's so gross. The specific name escapes me, but it was like, eat your DDT. Eat DDT. DDT is safe. You can have DDT in your home and it's fun. I mean, this was the campaign. They were telling people that you could actually ingest DDT. In fact, you can go onto YouTube and find a number of videos. Just search "eat DDT" and you will find a number of videos where they have people actually using these pesticide sprays. And the best one is this guy sprays his porridge. He goes, the man wants to show that the DDT is safe. So he's going to pour it in his porridge and eat it. And this guy just sprays bug killer, weed killer, insecticide into his porridge, which is probably already disgusting. At what point was porridge ever a good option? But he sprays the DDT into his porridge and then eats it in front of the camera. And the best part is it was this weird racist thing where they showed like these African bushmen who were the ones who were protesting the use of DDT, saying it's dangerous. So this is why the guy sprays the DDT into his porridge and eats it in front of the African bushmen to show them, look, I can eat all this DDT I want. It's totally fine. And then they've got videos, I guess the city of San Antonio approved the use of DDT in school cafeterias. And so they show videos of these, I guess, maintenance people walking through cafeterias, spraying DDT on kids, fumigating fucking cafeterias. I mean, we're not talking like a couple little sprays. We're talking like a fire extinguisher of DDT being fumigated on children eating lunch in a school cafeteria. And if that's not bad enough, the kids go outside and they go play in the pool. Well, here comes this asshole again, pretty much fumigating the whole swimming pool. Like it's like a fire hose. And the kids are like, oh, spray me. And they're getting sprayed with insecticide. This was what was happening in the 1940s, early 1950s. So what happens is you look at this chart of polio and it correlates almost to a T of the popularity of DDT use, okay? So you see it start to really pop up here in 1950, peaks out there in 1953, and then starts to drop after that, which again correlates exactly as to when they were really pushing this DDT product for people to use in their homes, that it was so safe, in fact, that you could eat. And then when they say, okay, well, hey, look, our bad, you totally shouldn't eat DDT. Like, we get if you want to, like, we're not going to get in your way, but like, you really shouldn't do that. And then you see the drop in polio follow exactly the same line. And this is only important because this DDT has been linked to diseases which, again, look exactly like polio, specifically this anterior horn spiraliditic disease, which the symptoms are basically verbatim exactly what polio is. So again, you see some serious fuckery going on here with the vaccine itself. And if we're going to talk about the vaccine and how it's great, let's also not forget that at some point they did come out with the vaccine and they did vaccinate people. Did the vaccine work? Well, according to the chart that I just looked at, yes. But like I just said, there's other factors that would play into that would make you think like, well, can we really see the data? Because this is not that convincing. In fact, what they did, if you Google the Cutter incident, this was an incident where the government went and just started vaccinating all of these kids. And over 40,000 kids that were vaccinated, I believe this was 1961, over 40,000 kids that were vaccinated actually got the polio vaccine. Now, there's some debate as to what polio vaccine was it. Was it the live virus? They were giving people the live virus. They were giving people the live virus, right? Which was also contaminated with the simian virus 40, the SV40 virus, which has been shown when you inject the SV40 virus, it almost immediately causes tumor and cancer cells. Like almost immediately in more people than you would want to even see this happen to, right? It literally gave people cancer, and it gave people polio. And it's just kind of one of those things that got swept under the rug. Yeah, the polio vaccine, it saved polio. It saved us from polio. No, it actually gave people polio. It fucking gave people polio. And the scary thing is that the SV40 virus does not die with the person that got infected with it. The simian virus actually gets passed down through generations. So there's a good chance that my mom, your grandma, your dad, my dad, all of our parents who were growing up in the 1950s, 1960s, there's a good chance they might have gotten this vaccine. And maybe they didn't get polio, but they definitely have the SV40 virus in them. And it's just chilling there. It's just dormant. And it got passed down to us. So many of us are probably sitting here living with this dormant SV40 monkey virus, and just have to really hope that it does not cause cancer. I don't know what else to say. Like, it, in studies, causes cancer. And you just have to hope that you don't create the atmosphere in your body for it to favor cancer growth. So that's pretty frightening, man. That's pretty frightening. In fact, in 2002, The Lancet published a study where the authors assert that the polio vaccine with the SV40 virus were responsible for at least half of the 55,000 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma cases that occur every year. Boy, oh boy. Boy, oh boy. And the scary thing is they're still taking that virus, the live virus with the SV40 virus in it. They're still taking the vaccine with the SV40 virus, and they're bringing it to third world countries, man. They're bringing it to India. They're bringing it to Afghanistan. They're bringing it to Africa, you know, and it's oral. It's taken orally. So it's not like they're getting injected. They're just taking it orally. And this is the shit that, yeah, it might be killing polio. You're right. It might be killing polio, but it is causing a lot of other problems. So before you just jump on the train and say, you know, use polio as your castle on the hill of examples, I would do some research into it, because it's pretty crazy when you actually look into the data. So again, I'm just saying this because this is the stuff that I'm curious about. You know, I'm not saying, you know, did the polio vaccine eradicate polio? Well, there's no more polio anymore. But was there ever polio? I don't know, you know? And this is what I want to know. And I'm not going to sit there and just take for granted, or just take the response that, yeah, you dummy, polio's gone because of the polio vaccine, because it's just not true, or it's not true in that sense. Same thing with the smallpox, same thing with the flu shot. The flu shot could be our generation's polio. So those who don't know history are doomed to repeat it. That's just what it is. You could look down the line. You could be willfully ignorant. You could just get, you know, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. You can just get cancer. You could just get whatever and just say, well, I guess it was just, I was unlucky. I guess I just got it on accident. No, dude. You're injecting chemicals into your body that have been proven to lead to this stuff. You're putting it in your kid's body. So take a moment and really think about it. Think about what this is. And so when you walk by your local Walgreens and they're just giving out flu shots, which, by the way, I mean, how is that not prescribed by a doctor? How is that not prescribed? How can just anybody, just put a flu shot in you? You know, some jerk off with 8 months of maybe not even that much, maybe an online degree in, some health administration as a phlebotomist can just poke you, put a needle in your arm, and inject you with a fucking virus, with chemicals, with heavy metals, and just that's how we do it. It's not smart. It's not smart at all. And I hope, if nothing else, from this little 3-part flu shot series, that's what you take away. Okay? You can argue my stats, you can argue my facts. Let's do that all day. I'm fine. I want to have this debate. But at the same time, if you don't take at least from this that you should be questioning your pharmacist and bring all the facts that I laid out, bring it to them and see what they say. And if this person has no idea what you're talking about, if they, tell you that you're crazy, that you're a psychopath, you're an anti-vaxxer, first of all, look at them. See how healthy they are. Look at how healthy they are. And if they look like shit, if I were you, I'd go running for the goddamn hills. I'd go running as fast out of that place as possible, because they are poisoning you. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. Again, if you have any feedback, send it to me via the social mediums. You can hit me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, not Snapchat. Snapchat is like dying. But YouTube, all Holistic A-Hole, all there. Join the Holistic A-Holes Facebook group and share this with people you love. I'll catch you all in the next one. Peace.